the Apollo 17 anomaly. In December 1972, Commander Eugene Cernan and geologist Harrison Schmitt became the last humans to walk on the moon during Apollo 17. But what they saw during their 3 days on the lunar surface would become one of NASA's most tightly guarded secrets. On their second moonwalk, while exploring the Taurus-Littrow Valley, Schmitt radioed Mission Control about something unusual. The official transcript reads, "There's something reflecting light on the crater rim. I'm going to investigate." For the next 11 minutes, all communication between Apollo 17 and Houston went silent. Years later, audio restoration specialists recovered fragments of what was said during that gap. Schmidt's voice can be heard saying, "This is artificial. Gene, look at the geometry. This isn't natural formation." Cernan's response ends with, "Houston, we need guidance on this. Over." The mission's photography records show another anomaly. Schmitt took over 400 photographs during that moonwalk, but only 387 appear in NASA's official archives. The missing 13 frames correspond exactly to the communication blackout. NASA claims the frames were overexposed and unusable, yet every other overexposed image from Apollo missions was still archived. Commander Cernan gave only one interview about the incident in 2010, 3 years before his death. When pressed about what they found, he stated, "We saw things up there that were matters of national security. I took an oath and I kept it. But the universe is full of surprises, and some of those surprises are very close to home." Dr. Harrison Schmitt has been more circumspect. He makes brief references to unusual geological formations that defied conventional explanation, but refuses to elaborate. Former NASA employees reported that Schmitt underwent an unusually lengthy debriefing, over 2 weeks in isolation, compared to the standard 3-day protocol. Most telling is what happened to the mission's unedited film reels. In 1976, a fire at a NASA storage facility destroyed the only copies of raw footage from Apollo 17's surface operations. The fire occurred in a climate-controlled, fire-suppressed vault that had operated without incident for over a decade. The destroyed footage was never mentioned in official reports. What did Cernan and Schmitt see on humanity's last visit to the moon? The evidence suggests it was significant enough to justify a cover-up that has lasted over 50 years. The Salyut 7 Angels. In July 1984, Soviet cosmonauts Leonid Kizym, Vladimir Solovyov, and Oleg Atkov were aboard the Salyut 7 space station, when all three witnessed something that Soviet authorities immediately classified. According to testimony that emerged after the USSR's collapse, the station was suddenly bathed in bright orange light. Looking through the portholes, they saw 7 massive humanoid figures outside. The beings appeared to be over 80 feet tall with wings and glowing halos. The entities kept pace with the station for over 10 minutes before fading from view. The cosmonauts reported the sighting to Mission Control and were immediately ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation. The official Soviet position was that the incident never occurred, but 12 days later, 3 more cosmonauts arrived at Salyut 7. On their second day aboard, all 6 crew members witnessed the same phenomenon. This time, they managed to capture photographs using station cameras. After the mission ended, all 6 cosmonauts were subjected to intensive debriefing by both military and KGB personnel. The photographs were immediately classified top secret. The cosmonauts were told that discussing the incident would result in prosecution for revealing state secrets. When the Soviet Union collapsed, Vladimir Solovyov spoke publicly. "We saw them, all 6 of us. These weren't hallucinations. We were trained observers, and what we witnessed was real, physical, and impossible to explain." Leonid Kizym revealed that Soviet scientists proposed theories ranging from plasma-based life forms to interdimensional entities to advanced surveillance technology. None could adequately explain the being's size, behavior, or appearance conditions. The classified photographs reportedly showed massive luminous forms displaying characteristics of both physical matter and pure energy. The entities moved with purpose and intelligence, adjusting their position to remain visible through the station's windows. Most disturbing is that Salyut 7 wasn't the only Soviet station to report these encounters. Cosmonauts from earlier Salyut missions and later Mir missions have quietly confirmed similar sightings that were never officially acknowledged. What were the Salyut 7 angels? The question remains unanswered, buried under layers of Cold War secrecy. Gordon Cooper's confession. Major Gordon Cooper was one of America's original Mercury 7 astronauts, a test pilot with an impeccable reputation, which makes his deathbed testimony in 2004 all the more remarkable. Cooper had hinted at knowledge of extraterrestrial phenomena throughout his life, but in his final interview, recorded days before his death from Parkinson's disease, he revealed the full truth about what he had witnessed. The most significant incident occurred in 1957 at Edwards Air Force Base, years before Cooper became an astronaut. While managing aircraft flight testing, Cooper and his team filmed a metallic disc-shaped craft landing on the dry lake bed. The object extended landing gear, settled on the ground, then lifted off and flew away at impossible speed. The entire encounter was captured on high-quality film by military cameras. Cooper developed the film and viewed it frame by frame. The object was clearly artificial and performed maneuvers that defied known aircraft capabilities. He immediately sent the film to Washington per standard protocol. The footage was never returned, and Cooper was told never to discuss the incident. But it was Cooper's experience during his Mercury Atlas 9 mission in 1963 that truly shook him. On his final orbit, he reported seeing a green glowing object approaching his capsule. The object paced him for several minutes, matching his orbital velocity perfectly. Ground tracking radar at Muchia, Australia confirmed the object's presence. When Cooper landed, he was informed that his report wouldn't appear in the official mission transcript. The radar data was classified, and Australian tracking station personnel were instructed not to discuss what they observed. In his final interview, Cooper was blunt. "For many years I have lived with a secret. I can now reveal that every day in the USA, our radar instruments capture objects of form and composition unknown to us. There are thousands of witness reports and documents to prove this, but nobody wants to make them public." Cooper revealed that during his time as a UN consultant, he attempted to establish a working group to investigate these phenomena. His proposal was blocked by US officials who told him such investigation would reveal information the public is not ready to know. Perhaps most disturbing was Cooper's claim that astronaut debriefings routinely included questions about unusual sightings, and that established protocols ensured such reports never reached the public. Gordon Cooper died on October 4, 2004, having finally broken his silence. His testimony adds credibility to decades of rumors about what NASA knows and refuses to reveal. The Gemini 4 incident. On June 3, 1965, astronaut James McDivitt was piloting Gemini 4 when he saw something that NASA would spend decades trying to dismiss. McDivitt refused to back down from his account, despite intense pressure. McDivitt spotted an object with big arms sticking out, approaching the capsule. He described it as cylindrical, with a pronounced protrusion, unlike any known satellite or spacecraft. The object was close enough to see structural details and appeared to be under powered control. McDivitt grabbed a camera and snapped photos before it moved away. His radio transmission was clear. "I have an unidentified object in sight. It appears to be artificial and is maneuvering in proximity to Gemini 4, attempting to photograph." When McDivitt returned, his debriefing lasted significantly longer than usual and included intelligence officers not normally present. The photographs were immediately classified. When eventually released, NASA claimed they showed nothing but lens flares. McDivitt insisted otherwise. In interviews over decades, he maintained he saw a structured craft exhibiting intelligent control. "I know what I saw," he stated repeatedly. "I had an excellent view, and it was definitely a manufactured object." Film technicians at NASA leaked that the original images clearly showed a cylindrical object with structural features, but these photographs were never included in the officially released set. What makes McDivitt's case compelling is his consistency. Unlike other astronauts who softened their accounts, McDivitt maintained his position until his death in 2022. He never accepted the lens flare explanation and never stopped questioning why his photographs were classified, then released in altered form. In a 2019 interview at age 90, McDivitt stated, "I saw something real. something manufactured, something deliberately approaching our spacecraft. NASA knows what I saw because they have the photographs. The fact that those photographs have never been properly released tells you everything. The ISS Blackout Protocol. In 2015, Commander Scott Kelly was 6 months into his year-long mission aboard the International Space Station when something happened that triggered what NASA internally calls the Blackout Protocol, an emergency procedure so classified that its existence wasn't confirmed until a Freedom of Information Act request forced the release of heavily redacted documents in 2019. The incident occurred during a routine livestream from the ISS to NASA's public feed. Kelly and Russian cosmonaut Mikhail Kornienko were conducting a tour of the station when Kelly suddenly stopped mid-sentence, looking at something outside the window. His exact words were, "Houston, we have something in visual range that's not on the manifest. Multiple objects, holding position relative to the station." The live feed cut off immediately. NASA's Public Affairs Office claimed it was a routine technical glitch, but the feed remained offline for over 3 hours, unprecedented for the ISS's typically reliable communications. When transmissions resumed, neither Kelly nor any crew member mentioned the sighting, and the station's external cameras were repositioned away from the area where Kelly had been looking. What happened during those 3 hours has been pieced together from leaked communications and testimony from mission control personnel who later came forward. According to these sources, Kelly reported seeing multiple disc-shaped objects maintaining a precise formation near the station. The objects were metallic, reflected sunlight, and moved with obvious purpose and coordination. Mission Control immediately activated the Blackout Protocol, which involves cutting all public feeds, switching to encrypted military channels, alerting NORAD and Space Command, and conducting an immediate threat assessment. The protocol is designed for scenarios where objects of unknown origin approach the ISS in ways that suggest intelligence and potential threat. During the blackout, Kelly and his crew were instructed to document everything they observed while maintaining continuous communication with Mission Control on secure channels. The station's external cameras were remotely operated to record the objects from multiple angles. This footage exists but remains classified under national security provisions. When Kelly returned to Earth in March 2016, his debriefing lasted significantly longer than standard protocol. Over 2 weeks of intensive sessions with NASA officials, military intelligence, and scientists. His brother, Mark Kelly, also an astronaut and now a U.S. Senator, was present for some of these sessions and has refused to discuss what was said. Scott Kelly's public statements about his year in space are carefully worded. When asked about unusual observations, he typically responds with vague references to interesting phenomena and things we're still trying to understand. However, in an off-the-record conversation at a private event in 2018, Kelly reportedly told several attendees that what we see up there would fundamentally change how people think about Earth's place in the universe. The leaked documents about the Blackout Protocol reveal that it has been activated at least 7 times since 2010. Each activation involves similar circumstances. ISS crew members observe objects that exhibit controlled flight characteristics. Public feeds are immediately terminated, and crew members undergo extensive classified debriefings upon return. Former NASA mission controller James Oberge, who worked at Mission Control for over 2 decades, has stated that protocols exist for handling various types of anomalous observations, and that these protocols are taken extremely seriously. He has suggested that the ISS encounters objects and phenomena with disturbing regularity that are never discussed publicly. What did Scott Kelly see that June day in 2015? The answer remains locked behind walls of classification and institutional silence. But the Blackout Protocol's very existence confirms that astronauts aboard the ISS regularly witness something that authorities consider too sensitive for public knowledge. Edgar Mitchell's warning. Apollo 14 astronaut. Dr. Edgar Mitchell was the 6th person to walk on the moon and held a doctorate in aeronautics and astronautics from MIT. He was also, by the end of his life, one of the most outspoken critics of government secrecy regarding extraterrestrial phenomena, and paid a heavy price for his candor. Mitchell's transformation from by-the-book astronaut to whistleblower began during his return from the moon in 1971. During the 3-day journey back to Earth, Mitchell experienced what he described as a profound sense of universal connectedness, a moment of clarity in which he understood that consciousness itself was a fundamental aspect of the universe, not just a byproduct of brain activity. This experience led him to spend decades researching consciousness, quantum physics, and the nature of reality. But it was his work with government insiders and military witnesses that led him to a disturbing conclusion. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and world governments had been hiding this fact for decades. In the final years of his life, Mitchell became increasingly vocal about what he had learned. In a 2008 radio interview, he stated, "I happen to have been privileged enough to be in on the fact that we've been visited on this planet, and the UFO phenomenon is real. It's been well covered up by all our governments for the last 60 years or so, but slowly it's going to come out." Mitchell went further, claiming that he had been briefed by military and intelligence personnel who had worked on recovered extraterrestrial technology. He stated that the 1947 Roswell incident was real, that spacecraft and beings had been recovered, and that a massive reverse engineering program had been underway for decades. Most controversially, he claimed that some astronauts, himself included, had been warned that our space activities were being monitored. The response from NASA was swift and harsh. The agency issued public statements distancing itself from Mitchell's claims and emphasizing that he was speaking only for himself, not for NASA. Behind the scenes, according to sources close to Mitchell, he was subjected to pressure from former colleagues and government officials to retract his statements. He refused. In 2015, the year before his death, Mitchell participated in a private briefing for several members of Congress. Details of that briefing remain confidential, but attendees reported that Mitchell presented documentary evidence, witness testimony, and technical data supporting his claims. He urged Congress to investigate what he called the most significant cover-up in human history. Mitchell also revealed something that other astronauts have hinted at, that lunar missions encountered phenomena that were immediately classified. He spoke of surveillance during Apollo operations, of objects pacing spacecraft, and of activities on the lunar surface that were expunged from official records. While he never provided specific details about his own Apollo 14 mission, he stated that the astronauts saw things they were told not to discuss. Perhaps most troubling was Mitchell's warning about the implications of continued secrecy. He argued that humanity needed to be prepared for open contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, and that the current policy of denial and ridicule was dangerous. "We're being visited by beings from somewhere else," he said in his final major interview, "and the evidence is overwhelming. The only question is, what are we going to do about it?" Dr. Edgar Mitchell died on February 4, 2016. His legacy remains controversial, with skeptics dismissing his claims as the delusions of an aging astronaut and believers viewing him as a hero who spoke truth to power. What's undeniable is that Mitchell had access to information that few others could claim, and he spent his final years trying to reveal secrets that powerful institutions wanted to keep hidden. The Shuttle Tether Incident. On February 25, 1996, the Space Shuttle Columbia was conducting the Tethered Satellite System, TSS-1R experiment. A 12-mile-long conducting tether was deployed from the shuttle, designed to generate electricity through interaction with Earth's magnetic field. When the tether unexpectedly broke and drifted away, NASA's cameras captured something that has never been adequately explained. The video footage shows the tumbling tether slowly moving away from Columbia. But surrounding the tether are dozens, possibly hundreds, of luminous disc-shaped objects. The objects appear to be several miles in diameter, if the tether's known length of 12 miles is used for scale. They move with obvious purposeful motion, passing behind the tether, pulsing with internal light, and executing coordinated maneuvers. The footage was broadcast live on NASA Select TV, and thousands of people recorded it before NASA cut the feed. Astronauts on board Columbia made several references to the objects in communications with Mission Control, describing them as very distinct and noting that they appeared to be moving at different velocities. NASA's official explanation was that the objects were ice particles or debris floating near the shuttle, made to appear large due to the camera being out of focus. The pulsing effect, they claimed, was caused by the camera's iris automatically adjusting to bright spots. The appearance of objects passing behind the tether was an optical illusion, but this explanation has significant problems. Optical analysis by independent researchers has demonstrated that the objects are clearly behind the tether, meaning they must be many miles away and thus genuinely enormous. The way the objects interact with light and their obvious three-dimensional rotation patterns are inconsistent with debris or ice particles. Most tellingly, the objects appear to be notched or irregular in shape, with one side showing a consistent dark indentation, a characteristic that debris or ice wouldn't display uniformly. Mark Carlotto, a specialist in image analysis, published a detailed study of the tether footage in 2005. His conclusion: the objects display characteristics inconsistent with nearby particles or debris. Their motion, morphology, and interaction with the tether suggest they are distant, large, and moving independently of any shuttle activity. Several astronauts from the mission have been asked about the tether incident in subsequent years. Their responses have been carefully neutral, neither confirming nor denying the extraordinary nature of what was filmed. Commander Andrew Allen stated only that there were some interesting observations made during that mission and declined to elaborate. What makes the tether incident particularly significant is the quality and quantity of the video evidence. Unlike many UFO reports that rely on blurry photos or eyewitness testimony, this event was captured by multiple NASA cameras at high resolution and was witnessed in real time by mission control and thousands of public observers. The footage exists, is readily available, and has been analyzed by experts from multiple disciplines. Dr. Jack Kasher, a physicist who specializes in image analysis, studied the footage and concluded that NASA's explanation was statistically impossible. He demonstrated that if the objects were nearby particles, their behavior would violate basic principles of orbital mechanics and optics. His analysis suggests the objects were at least several miles in diameter and were moving under intelligent control. The tether incident represents one of the few times that extensive video documentation of anomalous objects in space became public before it could be classified or explained away. Whatever those objects were, they demonstrated characteristics that challenge conventional explanations, and the fact that they appeared around a high-voltage electrical experiment raises disturbing questions about what attracted them to Columbia that day. The Buzz Aldrin polygraph. In 2018, news emerged that Buzz Aldrin, the second person to walk on the moon, had passed a polygraph test about his claims regarding a UFO encounter during the Apollo 11 mission. What received less attention was the full context of that polygraph and what it revealed about a decades-old cover-up. The encounter occurred during Apollo 11's journey to the moon in July 1969. Aldrin, along with Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins, observed an object pacing their spacecraft. In public, Aldrin has always described this as likely being one of the spacecraft's detached panels catching sunlight. But the polygraph test, administered by the Institute of Bioacoustic Biology, revealed a more complex truth. During the test, Aldrin was asked detailed questions about the Apollo 11 UFO sighting. His responses, which the polygraph indicated were truthful, painted a picture very different from his public statements. According to the test results, Aldrin believed the object was not a panel, exhibited controlled flight characteristics, and appeared to be observing the Apollo spacecraft. But the polygraph revealed something even more significant. When asked if he had been instructed by NASA not to discuss the full details of the encounter, Aldrin's affirmative response showed complete truthfulness. When asked if there were aspects of Apollo missions that remain classified for national security reasons, again, his affirmative response registered as truthful. Most telling was Aldrin's response to the question, "Did you see evidence on the moon that suggested previous visitation by non-human intelligence?" His answer, yes, showed no signs of deception. Follow-up questions revealed that this evidence was photographed, but those specific images were handled differently from the rest of the Apollo 11 photography. The polygraph administrator's report noted that Aldrin showed signs of significant stress when discussing these topics, consistent with someone revealing information they had kept secret for decades. The report concluded, Subject appears to be truthfully recounting experiences that he has been prevented from discussing openly. This isn't the only indication that Aldrin knows more than he's publicly stated. In a 2014 Reddit Ask Me Anything session, when asked what he saw on the moon, Aldrin's carefully worded response was, "There are some interesting things that I'm not at liberty to discuss in this forum. The official record speaks for itself, but personal observations sometimes must remain personal for reasons beyond my control." In multiple interviews, Aldrin has made cryptic references to protocols that astronauts must follow regarding certain observations. He has stated that debriefings after lunar missions included specific instructions about what could and couldn't be discussed publicly, and that violations of these instructions could result in loss of pension and other consequences. Other Apollo astronauts have made similar hints. Alan Bean, the fourth person to walk on the moon, stated in a 2015 interview, "If we had seen something truly extraordinary up there, would we be allowed to tell you? That's the question you should be asking." Bean died in 2018 without elaborating. The polygraph results suggest that Buzz Aldrin, one of America's most celebrated heroes, has lived for over 50 years with knowledge that he is prohibited from sharing. His psychological stress over this enforced silence is evident in the test results, which show elevated responses when discussing the gap between what he knows and what he's allowed to say. In 2019, at age 89, Aldrin gave an interview in which he came closest to breaking his silence. When asked if there were things about the moon missions that the public doesn't know, he responded, "There are always things that remain private, and some things remain private because that's what we were told they had to be. And after 50 years, that doesn't change, because the reasons they were private haven't changed." What did Buzz Aldrin see on the moon? The polygraph suggests he saw something extraordinary, something that, decades later, he still isn't allowed to discuss. The Russian Classified Archive. In 2019, a former Soviet space program engineer named Viktor Afanasyev provided explosive testimony about systematic cover-ups of cosmonaut encounters with unexplained phenomena. Afanasyev, who had worked in mission control during the height of the Cold War space race, claimed he had maintained secret archives of classified incident reports that detailed dozens of encounters between Soviet spacecraft and objects of unknown origin. According to Afanasyev, the Soviet space program had a classified protocol, known internally as Special Event Documentation, that required cosmonauts to report any observations of unexplained phenomena through secure channels. These reports were never included in official mission logs and were maintained in separate files that were accessible only to KGB-vetted personnel. Afanasiev's testimony included specific incidents that were corroborated by other sources. He described a 1978 Soyuz mission where cosmonaut Vladimir Kovalyonok reported that a sphere of light approached his spacecraft, paced it for several minutes, then suddenly accelerated away at impossible speed. Kovalyonok's report described the object as intelligently controlled and noted that it seemed to be scanning or examining the Soyuz capsule. In the 1980s, Afanasyev claims encounters became more frequent. Multiple Salyut and Mir missions reported objects matching their orbital velocity, maintaining position near the stations for extended periods, and displaying flight characteristics that defied known technology. In one incident from 1982, an object reportedly interfaced with a Soyuz spacecraft's computer systems, causing temporary malfunctions that resolved when the object departed. Most disturbing was Afanasiev's claim that at least 2 cosmonauts had experienced close encounters during spacewalks. In one case from 1991, a cosmonaut reported seeing a large disc-shaped craft emerge from Earth's shadow while he was outside Mir. The object was reportedly close enough that he could see surface details, ports or windows, before it moved away. The incident was never mentioned in official reports, and the cosmonaut was immediately recalled inside and underwent psychological evaluation. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Afanasyev says the Special Event Documentation Archive was split up. Some files went to the Russian Federal Space Agency, Roscosmos, others to Russian intelligence services, and some were allegedly destroyed. Afanasyev claims he maintained copies of dozens of reports, but these documents have never been independently verified or made public. Cosmonaut Marina Popovich, a decorated Soviet pilot and engineer, corroborated some of Afanasyev's claims before her death in 2017. She stated that Soviet cosmonauts were strictly forbidden from discussing unusual observations, and that debriefings after missions sometimes included KGB personnel specifically interested in anomalous encounters. Former cosmonaut Georgy Grechko, who flew 3 space missions between 1975 and 1985, gave a brief interview in 2008 where he acknowledged that not everything we saw in space made it into official reports. When pressed for details, he stated, "There were guidelines about what could be discussed and what couldn't. Those guidelines came from very high up, and we followed them. That's all I can say." The Russian government has never acknowledged the existence of the special event documentation archive that Afanasyev described. Freedom of information laws in Russia are less robust than in Western countries, making verification of his claims difficult. However, several independent researchers have noted that gaps exist in Soviet space mission documentation, periods where communication transcripts are incomplete or where mission timelines have unexplained gaps. What makes Afanasyev's testimony compelling is his specificity. He provided exact dates, mission numbers, and cosmonaut names for incidents he described. While the actual documents he claims to possess have never been publicly verified, several of the incidents he detailed have been partially confirmed through other sources or through brief mentions in cosmonauts' memoirs. The question remains, if the Soviet Union was systematically documenting and suppressing information about unexplained encounters in space, is it likely that the United States was doing the same? And if so, what does that joint suppression of information tell us about what humanity has been witnessing beyond Earth's atmosphere? The 2022 incident nobody talks about. In March 2022, something happened aboard the International Space Station that resulted in the longest communications blackout in the station's history, over 7 hours without public updates from NASA or Roscosmos. When communications resumed, both agencies claimed it was a routine software update, but multiple inconsistencies suggest something far more significant occurred. The incident began during a routine resupply docking. Shortly after a Progress cargo vehicle docked, all public communication ceased. NASA's live feeds went dark, social media updates stopped, and even automated data streams researchers used to track ISS operations were interrupted. What emerged through carefully worded statements and leaked information suggests something was detected approaching the ISS during docking. Multiple crew members observed the object, which appeared on tracking systems, but didn't correspond to any known satellite or debris. According to space community sources, the object maintained position relative to the ISS for several hours, exhibiting controlled flight that ruled out natural phenomena or debris. The blackout protocol was activated, the same classified emergency procedure used during Scott Kelly's 2015 sighting. What makes this incident significant is the international cooperation it triggered. Despite severe tensions between Russia and the United States due to Ukraine, both space agencies coordinated responses seamlessly, suggesting pre-established protocols that override geopolitical conflicts. Mission Commander Thomas Marshburn never spoke publicly about that day. His debriefing upon returning in May 2022 reportedly lasted over 3 weeks, far longer than standard. Marshburn retired from NASA shortly afterward, despite being in excellent health at the peak of his career. ESA astronaut Matthias Maurer, also aboard the ISS in March 2022, acknowledged there had been an unusual situation requiring immediate attention from multiple agencies. When pressed for details, he stated, "There are situations in space that fall under international security protocols. I'm not authorized to discuss them. Amateur satellite trackers and radio enthusiasts reported anomalies consistent with the timing. Several detected unusual encrypted communications on frequencies typically used for classified military space operations, suggesting coordination between U.S. Space Command, Russian Space Forces, and other agencies. Perhaps most telling is what happened afterward. Multiple astronauts from various agencies were quietly rotated off the ISS ahead of schedule, their replacements undergoing additional training not part of standard protocols. One source described it as briefing for scenarios that aren't in the manual. In August 2022, 5 months after the incident, NASA quietly updated policies regarding astronaut communications about non-standard observations. New guidelines explicitly state crew must route all reports of unidentified objects or phenomena through classified channels and not discuss such observations publicly without authorization. The March 2022 incident represents the most recent and possibly most significant encounter between ISS crew and unexplained phenomena. The extraordinary security response, international cooperation despite global tensions, and subsequent policy changes suggest what occurred was treated as a matter of highest importance. What did the ISS crew see that March day? Why did it trigger such extensive response from multiple space agencies? The answers remain locked away, but the questions grow more urgent as humanity's presence in space expands. These 10 cases represent a disturbing pattern spanning 6 decades of human spaceflight. From Mercury to the International Space Station, from American astronauts to Soviet cosmonauts, trained observers have witnessed phenomena that challenge our understanding of what exists beyond Earth's atmosphere. And consistently, systematically, they have been silenced. The evidence is no longer circumstantial. We have polygraph tests confirming astronauts' claims. We have declassified documents acknowledging encounter protocols. We have video footage defying conventional explanation. We have deathbed confessions from men who spent their lives bound by secrecy. We have whistleblowers from multiple space agencies corroborating the same basic facts. What unites these cases isn't just the extraordinary observations, but the institutional response, the immediate communication blackouts, the extended classified debriefings, the missing photographs and altered records. The careers ended for those who spoke too freely, the security oaths extending beyond retirement and even to the grave. These weren't hallucinations or misidentifications. These were trained observers, military test pilots, scientists, engineers, reporting what they saw through official channels and being told their observations must remain secret. The question is no longer whether astronauts have witnessed unexplained phenomena in space. The evidence makes that undeniable. The question is why their testimony continues to be suppressed, what implications their observations carry, and how long humanity will be kept in the dark about what's really out there. As we prepare for a new era of space exploration, missions to Mars, permanent lunar bases, commercial space stations, we must ask, are we ready to confront what astronauts have been seeing for decades? Or will the next generation of space travelers be bound by the same oaths of silence that have hidden the truth for over 50 years? The final frontier holds secrets that someone has decided we're not ready to know, but the astronauts who've been there are trying to tell us the truth. Maybe it's time we listened.